Look, let's be honest. Coca-Cola is everywhere. It's in vending machines in the middle of nowhere. It's probably being used to clean a car battery somewhere right now. It's the official beverage of I need to stay awake for this meeting. And yet, for a drink that seems as globally present as air, or pigeons, or that one Ed Sheeran song you can't escape, there are places where it has been, and in some cases still is, completely, utterly banned. Yes, banned. As in, you cannot have this delicious can of carbonated sugar water. Which, when you think about it, is absolutely wild. It's just brown fizzy liquid. So why would any government go to the trouble of outlawing it? The easy answer is, oh, it's unhealthy. And sure, it's not exactly a kale smoothie. Nobody's doctor is saying, your cholesterol is a bit high, try switching to Diet Coke. But the real reasons are so much more complicated, so much more political, and frankly, so much more interesting than a simple health warning. Banning Coca-Cola has rarely been about the sugar content. Instead, it's been a massive, symbolic middle finger to America. It's a tool for political posturing, a weapon in trade wars, and a rallying cry for national identity. It's the story of how a simple soft drink became a stand-in for capitalism, imperialism, and the entire Western world. So buckle up, because things are about to get weirdly fizzy. And yes, that pun was absolutely intended. The Cold War. A time of spies, nuclear brinkmanship, two global superpowers staring each other down like angry cats. And right in the middle of it all, you guessed it, our fizzy friend, Coca-Cola. To the Soviet Union and its allies, Coke wasn't just a drink. No. It was Coca, colonization. It was liquid capitalism. It was the sugary, caffeinated embodiment of the decadent, morally bankrupt West. Every bottle was seen as a tiny Trojan horse, smuggling American values past the Iron Curtain, one sip at a time. So, naturally, the Soviet Union said, "Niet." They didn't just dislike Coke, they actively worked to create their own alternatives. You had Baikal in Russia, a dark, herbal-tasting drink. You had Kofola in Czechoslovakia, which is still popular today and tastes like, well, it tastes like Kofola. In 1972, Pepsi, yes, Pepsi, Coke's eternal rival, managed to crack the Soviet market. Not with cash, because the ruble was worthless. Internationally. No, they did it by trading Pepsi concentrate for a fleet of Soviet warships. For a brief, glorious moment, PepsiCo was the sixth largest military in the world. It's a perfect Cold War story. A conflict so absurd that a soda company ended up with a navy. All because Coca-Cola was seen as too powerful, too American, for the Soviets to stomach. Let's talk about Cuba, an island of classic cars, incredible music, and, for over 60 years, a distinct lack of Coca-Cola. Before the revolution in 1959, Cuba was one of Coca-Cola's most lucrative international markets. Havana was home to one of its first bottling plants outside the United States. Coke was everywhere. It was a symbol of the glamorous, American-influenced nightlife that defined pre-revolutionary Cuba. And that is precisely why it had to go. When Fidel Castro came to power, his mission was to purge Cuba of all American influence. What was a more potent symbol than the giant Coca-Cola signs dotting the Havana skyline? The revolutionary government began nationalizing private industries, and, on its list, were all American-owned businesses. Coca-Cola's assets, bottling plants, Coca-Cola's assets, equipment, Coca-Cola's assets, trucks, were seized by the state. The company, seeing the writing on the wall, fled the island in 1960, and the U.S. embargo that followed a couple of years later slammed the door shut for good. So, what did the Cuban government do? They created their own version, of course. Using the newly seized bottling plants, they launched Tu Cola, which translates to Your Cola. It's a brilliant piece of socialist marketing. It's not my cola, the American corporation's cola. It's your cola, the people's cola. Today, Cuba remains one of only 2 countries in the world where Coca-Cola is not officially sold. Cuba, North Korea. For nearly a quarter of a century, from 1967 to 1991, Coca-Cola was banned across the Arab League. That's over 20 nations. It had nothing to do with sugar. It wasn't about capitalism. It was about the Arab-Israeli conflict. In 1966, Coca-Cola opened a bottling plant in Israel. The Arab League saw that as a direct violation of their boycott. By doing business with Israel, Coca-Cola was seen as legitimizing the state. The response was swift and unified. The Central Boycott Office placed Coca-Cola on its blacklist. No member state could import Coca-Cola. No member state could bottle Coca-Cola. No member state could sell Coca-Cola. But it was an immense opportunity for Pepsi. Pepsi had avoided Israel and suddenly owned the Middle Eastern cola market. In Arab countries, people drank Pepsi. In Israel, people drank Coke. For a generation in Egypt, Pepsi was simply the cola. For a generation in Saudi Arabia, Pepsi was simply the cola. For a generation in Iraq, Pepsi was simply the cola. The ban lifted in stages, starting with Egypt in 1979 after its peace treaty. Most other countries reopened by 1991. A simple can of soda became a proxy for deep political and religious divisions. 24 years of fizzy diplomacy. In 1977, Coca-Cola wasn't just banned in India, it was kicked out. A new government, the Janata Party, had come to power, and it was deeply committed to economic nationalism and self-reliance. It passed a law called the Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, or AFERA, which required foreign companies to dilute their equity to 40% and, crucially, to transfer their technical know-how to their Indian partners. For Coca-Cola, it was impossible. Why? Because of the sacred, mythical, locked-in-a-vault, secret formula for merchandise 7X. The idea of handing it over to an Indian affiliate was, honestly, company heresy. It was like asking Colonel Sanders to publish his 11 herbs and spices on the front page of the New York Times. The Indian government, however, didn't budge. They essentially said, "Show us the recipe or get out." Faced with an ultimatum, Coca-Cola made a dramatic choice. It packed its bags and left the country. For a company obsessed with global domination, voluntarily abandoning a market of over 600 million people was unheard of. This created a massive void in the Indian soft drink market, and nature, and capitalism, abhors a vacuum. Almost immediately, dozens of domestic cola brands sprang up to fill the gap. The most famous of these was Campa Cola, a brand started by the same local bottler that had previously worked with Coke. When Coca-Cola finally returned to India in 1993, after economic liberalization policies were introduced, it found a completely changed landscape. It ended up having to buy out its old rivals, including the hugely popular Thumbs Up, which it still sells in India today, a delicious, bubbly trophy from its long and strange exile. If there's one place on Earth you'd expect Coca-Cola to be banned, it's the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. North Korea is the final boss of Coca-Cola bans. Along with Cuba, it's one of only 2 countries where Coke does not officially operate. The reasons are painfully obvious. Decades of U.S. sanctions, a state of perpetual hostility, a fiercely isolationist ideology that treats anything American as poison. The red and white logo is nowhere to be found, at least not officially. For the regime, Coca-Cola is the pinnacle of American imperialist culture. It's the antithesis of yucha, or self-reliance. But here's where it gets interesting. Coca-Cola still manages to seep through the cracks. The North Korean elite, with foreign currency and access to special Pyongyang shops, get it. It's smuggled in from China, sold at exorbitant prices in hard currency stores for the privileged and foreign visitors. For the average citizen, Coke is unheard of. For the elite, it's a status symbol, publicly condemned as American aggression, privately consumed by the powerful. The ban is for the masses. The elite enjoy the perks. The forbidden fizz becomes a small, sweet taste of the world they denounce. Sometimes, the reason for a Coca-Cola ban isn't a grand ideological struggle or a geopolitical conflict. Sometimes, it's dressed up in the seemingly noble language of public health, but with a hefty dose of political opportunism. A fascinating case study is Venezuela under Hugo Chavez. Chavez was a master of political theater, and he frequently used anti-American sentiment to bolster his populist credentials. On several occasions, he threatened to expel Coca-Cola from the country, framing it as a fight against corporate imperialism that was poisoning his people. In 2009, his government seized a plot of land used by a Coca-Cola bottler, declaring it was needed for public housing. While the public rationale was about social welfare, the underlying message was clear. We are in charge here, not some multinational from Atlanta. In Mexico, which has one of the highest rates of soda consumption and diabetes in the world, activists, and politicians have often singled out Coca-Cola. In the state of Chiapas, a local town council actually banned the sale of sugary drinks, including Coke, in 2021. While the health reasons were undeniable, local Coca-Cola astigie pertupupokahoy akolain and Coca-Colas were also accused of depleting scarce water resources. The move was also deeply symbolic. It was a small indigenous community standing up to a global giant, a powerful David and Goliath narrative that resonated far beyond the town's borders. These instances show how public health can become a convenient and effective political weapon. Coca-Cola, with its global recognition and American roots, is the perfect scapegoat. So, what actually happens when Coca-Cola gets the boot? Does society crumble? Do people wander the streets in a caffeine-deprived haze? Of course not. First, there's the economic effect on the local people who relied on the company for their livelihoods. Coca-Cola doesn't just ship in finished products. It builds bottling plants. It hires local workers. It sets up distribution networks, truckers. It sets up distribution networks, shopkeepers. When the company is forced out, that entire ecosystem vanishes. Then there's the cultural impact. Coke often gains a mythical status where it's banned. It becomes a symbol of the forbidden, a taste of a different world. Behind the Iron Curtain, or in Cuba, a smuggled can was a small act of rebellion. It represented choice, freedom, glamour. Ultimately, life goes on. In the Middle East, Pepsi became the drink of choice. In India, local brands thrived. In Cuba, people drink to cola. The world does not end. Ultimately, the tale of Coca-Cola bans is a microcosm of the last 75 years of global history. It's a story of the Cold War, of decolonization, of nationalism, and of the relentless, effervescent march of globalization. It proves that nothing, not even a soft drink, is immune to politics. So the next time you hear that satisfying hiss as you open a can of Coke, remember, you're not just holding a beverage, you're holding a piece of history. A symbol of power, a frequent bubbly combatant in international relations. And that, frankly, is a lot more interesting than just sugar water.